wondering how you're feeling about that Citrini Research report, a relatively small outfit, but a huge impact on markets. Is this a reflection of the fears that are out there about what AI is going to bring for all of us?
It was an interesting read, and I can appreciate a lot of the focus on what does this revolutionary and disruptive technology bring on a multi-year type of basis. And it struck me as a bit of a thought piece, a little bit academic in nature, and trying to imagine oneself a half decade into the future and looking back into a series of events, that potentially could occur. There is no doubt that there is going to be some winners and losers through this era of disruption in terms of AI. And that is actually commonplace with disruptive and new technologies over time. So in that respect, it's probably not going to be that different from many of these other big advancements and industrializations over time. I think the importance is going to be nimble, to be focused on companies that ideally have resilient business models, that have proven ability to generate cash flow into the future and can adapt with the time. So this type of volatility and back and forth that we're seeing in markets is a bit of a byproduct of research reports and focusing on what's happening with the AR trade. It's a kind of thing we'll probably continue to see in the weeks and months to come.
What did you think of the idea of mass layoffs and therefore the need for government taxation? I mean, the report was sort of talking about it being AI being revolutionary because it's kind of replacing human intelligence. But I think the thing that people took away from it was the idea of the kind of replacement of workers. Is that anything new?
So disintermediation of different employees in different sectors is also a characteristic of different industrialization-oriented changes that we've seen over time. The ATM machine, for example, is something that is often pointed to, and there was a lot of fear that, oh, goodness gracious, this is going to result in a tremendous loss of jobs over time. And in fact, it ultimately ended up with a pivot of people doing all kinds of other different things on the machinery side, services, and pivoting to other areas of the economy. Now, I could appreciate how the impact of AI does look to be more bigger picture disruptive in nature. But if you believe in human ingenuity and the incredible dynamism of the US and the global economy and the ability of business leaders and economies and people that are driving technology to adapt, then I think you actually want to take the optimistic viewpoint here that AI can be a contributor to economic growth, productivity, and ideally the adaptability that the global economy has shown over time also sees us through this transition, even though it may have some bumpy and disruptive moments, just like some reports have been talking about recently.
Okay. The other, of course, big story that we're following this morning is the new tariff regime, the new 10% global tariff coming after Friday's Supreme Court ruling as well. Does this do more than just introduce uncertainty again to the tariff story?
So, to a degree, yes. But interestingly, the ultimate effective tariff rate was in the mid to high teens at about 16% before things changed with the series of events that occurred with the Supreme Court ruling and then 10% announcement, the 15% that has not actually been put into force. But if we kind of go through each of those steps, and if that next level occurs, then the re-landing zone could actually be in the 13.5% range, which is really not that dissimilar to the 60% number that we were, before the series of things occurred over the course of the last few days. So we don't actually think it is likely to be an enormous factor for the directionality of the global economy and what happens with markets in the quarters to come. And furthermore, one of the things that's perhaps a bit encouraging, think back to the post-Liberation Day period in 2025. There were a lot of fears of a massive stagflationary impulse on the global economy. Many economists around the world were predicting a U.S. recession. There was great concerns about where everything was going to go. We have actually seen a global economy that's continued to chug along. Earnings have really continued to chug along, and we have not actually had some terrible, persistent inflationary uptrend spike. So again, with that optimistic type of viewpoint that I expressed earlier, the dynamism of the global economy continues to show its stuff time and again. And we believe that that same type of pattern of being able to weather this relatively new normal type of environment is probably also going to continue to be the case in 26.